Men of Iron, Chapter 14. If Miles fancied that a single victory over his enemy would cure the evil against which he fought, he was gravely mistaken. Wrongs are not righted so easily at that. It was only the beginning. Other and far more bitter battles lay before him, before he could look around him and say, "I have won." For a day, or for 2 days, the bachelors were quite demoralized at the fall of their leader, and the Knights of the Rose were proportionally uplifted. The day that Blunt met his fall, the wooden tank in which the water had been poured every morning was found to have been taken away. The bachelors made a great show of indignation and inquiry. Who was it that had stole their tank? If they did but know, they would smart for it. "Ho, ho!" roared Edmund Wilkes, so that the whole dormitory heard him. "Smoke ye not their tricks, lads? See you not that they have stolen their own water tank, so that they might have no need for another fight over the carrying of the water?" The bachelors made an obvious show of not having heard what he said, and a general laugh went around. No one doubted that Wilkes had spoken the truth to this taunt, and that the bachelors had indeed stolen their own tank, so no more water was ever carried for the head squires. But it was plain to see that the war for the upper hand was not yet over. Even if Miles had entertained comforting thoughts on the contrary, he was speedily undeceived. One morning, about a week after the fight, as he and Guskin were crossing the armory court, they were hailed by a group of the bachelors standing at the stone steps of the great building. "Halloa, Falworth!" they cried. "Know ye that Blunt is nigh well again?" "Nay," said Miles, "I knew it not, but I am right glad to hear it." "You'll sing us different songs soon enough," said one of the bachelors. "I tell ye he is hot against you, and swears when he comes again he will carve you soothly." "Ay, Mary," said another, "I would not be in your skin a week hence for a ducat. Only this morning he told Philip Mulberry that he would have your blood for the fall you gave him. Look to yourself, Falworth. He comes again Wednesday, or maybe Thursday of next. Ye stand in perilous state." "Miles," said Guskin, as they entered the great quadrangle, "I do indeed fear that he means to do you evil." "I know not," said Miles quite boldly, "but I fear him not." Nevertheless, his heart was heavy with the weight of impending ill. One evening the bachelors were more than usually noisy in their end of the dormitory, laughing and talking and shouting to one another. "Halloa, you Sirrah Falworth!" called one of them along the length of the room. "Blood comes again tomorrow." Miles saw Guskin direct a sharp glance at him, but he answered nothing, either to his enemy's words or to his friend's look. As the bachelor had said, Blood came the next morning. It was just after chapel, and the whole body of squires was gathered in the armory, waiting for the orders of the day and the calling of the roll of the chosen for household duty. Miles was sitting on a bench along the wall, talking and jesting with some who stood by, when of a sudden his heart gave a great leap within him. Walter Blunt came walking into the door as if nothing had passed, and at his unexpected coming the hubbub of talk and laughter was suddenly checked. Even Miles stopped in his speech for a moment, and then continued with a beating heart and a carelessness of manner that was altogether assumed. In his hand Blunt carried the house orders for the day, and without seeming to notice Miles, he opened it, and read the list of those called upon for household service. Miles had risen, and was now standing listening with the others. When Blunt had ended reading the list of names, he rolled up the parchment and thrust it into his belt. Then, swinging suddenly on his heel, he strode straight up to Miles, facing him. A moment or two of deep silence followed. Not a sound broke the stillness. When Blunt spoke, everyone in the armory heard his words. "Sirrah," said he, "ye did put foul shame upon me. Never, never will I forget or forgive that offence, and will have a reckoning with you right soon that ye will not forget to the last day of your life." When Miles had seen his enemy turn upon him, he did not at first know what to expect. He would not have been surprised had they come to blows there and then, and he had held himself prepared for any event. He faced the other plucky enough, and without flinching, and spoke up boldly in answer. "So be it, Walter Blunt. I fear ye not to whatever ye may consider me." "Do ye not?" said Blunt. "By Our Lady, Ye will have cause to fear me before I am through with you." He then smiled, a baleful, lingering smile, and then turned slowly and walked away. "What think ye, Myles?" said Guskin, as the two left the armory together. "I think not," said Myles, gruffly. "He will not dare touch me to harm me. I fear him not at all." Nevertheless, he did not speak the feelings of his heart. "I know not, Myles," said Guskin, shaking his head doubtfully. "Walter Blunt is a cunning, evil-minded knave, and I think he'll do whatever evil he promises." "I fear him not," said Myles again, but his heart forebode trouble. The coming of the head squire made a very great change in the condition of affairs. Even before that coming, the bachelors had somewhat recovered from their demoralization, and now again they began to pluck up their confidence, and to order the younger squires and pages upon their personal service, or upon that. "See ye not," said Myles one day, when the Knight of the Roses were gathered in the Brutus Tower, "see ye not that they grow as bold as ever? If we do not put a stop to this overmastery now, it will never stop." "Best let it be, Myles," said Wilkes. "They'll kill you if you cease not troubling them. Ye have bred mischief enough for yourself already." "No matter for that," said Myles. "It is not to be borne that they order others of us about as they do. I mean to speak to them tonight, and tell them it shall not be." And he was as good as his word. That night, as the youngsters were shouting and romping and skylarking, as they always did before turning in, he stood upon his cot, and he shouted, "Silence! Listen!" And then in the hush that followed, "I want those bachelors to hear this, that we squires serve them no longer, and if they would have someone to wait upon them, they must get them elsewhere than here. There be 20 of us to stand against them, and perhaps more, and we mean that they shall have service of us no more." Then he jumped down from his elevated stand, and an uproar of confusion instantly filled the place. What was the effect of his words upon the bachelors, he himself could not see. What was the result, he was not slow in discovering. The next day, Myles and Guskin were throwing their daggers for a wager at a wooden target against the wall back of the armorer's smithy. Wilkes, Goss, and one or two others of the squires were sitting on a bench looking on, and now and then applauding a more than usually well-aimed cast of the knife. Suddenly that impish little page, spoken of before, Robert Ingoldsby, thrust his shock head around the corner of the smithy, and cried out, "Ho, Hal Falsworth! Blunt is going to serve you out today, and I myself heard him say so. He says he's going to slit your ears." And then he was gone as suddenly as he had appeared. Myles darted after him, caught him midway in the quadrangle, and brought him back by the scruff of his neck, squalling and struggling against it. "There," said he, still panting from the chase, and seating the boy by no means gently upon the bench beside Wilkes. "Sit ye there, ye imp of evil, and now tell me what ye do mean by your words. If ye stop not your outcry, I will cut your throat." And he made a ferocious gesture with his dagger. It was by no means easy to worm the story from the mischievous little monkey. He knew Myles too well to be in the least afraid of his threats. But at last, by dint of bribing and coaxing, Myles and his friends finally managed to get at the facts. The youngster had been sent to clean the riding boots of one of the bachelors, instead of which he had lolled idly on a cot in the dormitory until he had fallen asleep. He had been wakened by the opening of the dormitory door and by the sound of voices. Among them was that of the taskmaster. Fearing punishment for his neglected duty, he had slipped out of the cot and hidden himself beneath it. Those who had entered were Walter Blunt and 3 of the older bachelors. Blunt's companions were trying to persuade him against something, but without avail. It was, Myles' heart thrilled and his blood boiled, to lie in wait for him, to overpower him by numbers, and to mutilate him by slitting his ears, a disgraceful punishment administered as a rule only for thieving and poaching. "He would not dare do such a thing," cried Myles, with heaving breast and flashing eyes. "Oh, but he would," said Guskin. "His father, Lord Reginald Blunt, is a great man over Nottingham, and my lord would not dare to punish him even for such a matter as that. But tell me, Robert Ingoldsby, do you know aught more of this matter? Prithee tell me, Robin, where do they propose to lie in wait for Falworth?" "Oh, in the gateway to the buttery court, so as to catch him when he passes by to the armory," answered the boy. "Are they there now?" said Wilkes. Aye, 9 of them, said Robin. I heard Blunt tell Mowbray to go and gather the others. He heard you tell Guso, Falworth, that you were going hither for the obelisk this morning to shoot at the rocks. That will do, Robin, said Miles. You may go. And therewith the little imp scurried off, pulling the lobes of his ears suggestively as he darted around the corner. The others looked at one another for a while in silence. So, comrades, said Miles at last, what shall we do now? Go and tell Sir James, said Guskin, promptly. Nay, said Miles, I take no such coward's part as that. I say if they hunger to fight, we shall give them their stomach full. The others were quite reluctant for such an extreme measure, but Miles, as usual, carried his way, and so a pitched battle was decided upon. It was Guskin who suggested the plan which they afterward followed. Then Wilkes started away to gather together those of the Knights of the Rose not upon household duty, and Miles with the others went to the armor-smith to have them make for them a set of knives with which to meet their enemies, knives with blades a foot long, pointed, and double-edged. The smith, leaning with his hammer upon the anvil, listened to them as they described the weapons. Nay, nay, Master Miles, said he when Miles had ended, by telling the use to which he intended putting them. Ye are going all wrong in this matter. With such blades, before this battle is ended, someone will be slain, and then murder will be done, and then the family of him who was killed will perhaps have ye cited, and mayhap it might even come to the hanging, for some of the boys have great folk behind them. Go ye to Tom Fletcher, Master Miles, and buy of him a good yew stave, such as one might break a head with, and with them, if ye keep your wits, ye might hold your own against knives, or even short blades. I tell you, even though my trade be making, rather I would have a good stout cudgel in my hand than the best dagger that ever was forged. Miles stood thoughtful for a moment or two, then looking up, I think ye speak truly, Peter, said he, and it we are well done to have blood upon our hands.